Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Speaker Stories. We're back here in 2026 after taking a few months off in the later part of last year. But today I'm joined by Jane Hearon, who's a geologist with the USGS in Denver here. She's currently conducting regional scale research and resource assessments in petroleum systems and geologic hydrogen. Thank you guys for being here. And Jane, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing?
Sure. Good. Glad to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So let's just start off and maybe tell us a little bit about where you're from.
Yeah, so I grew up in New York State, which is actually, I just noticed right behind me, sort
Yeah,
of not far from where my finger is, just
that's
outside New York City. Um, and I went to college in New York State too. I went to Cornell University. But fun fact, I did not study geology as an undergraduate.
okay.
um, I studied economics, so nothing to do with rocks at all. And here I am, many, many years later at the USGS. And I love my job.
All right. Okay. There's a lot to unpack there. Let's maybe start with were you interested in rocks and outcrops as a kid? Like, were there?
Yeah, I think any geologist you ask will say, of course I was. I was always, you know, coming back from vacation with a much heavier bag than when I started. Lots of nice sedimentary and crystalline rocks near where we grew up. So got the best of both worlds. Loved hunting for fossils and things like that, but never really knew that you could become a geologist as a profession. That was just not in the school repertoire at all.
Yeah, you could get paid for something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so okay, so let's talk about economics. How did you get into that like as an undergrad? So let's start there and then maybe work the transition to the
Yeah, I think I stumbled into it I mean, I wish I had a really fun story there, but I was like probably a junior and I was like, I probably need to declare a major. And I guess I'm oriented in math and numbers. And so that seemed sort of like a nice path. And I really enjoyed studying it at the time. And, but again, geology, I never even took a geology class in my undergrad. Like, again, not even in a window of possibility for even just a class. So again, I know.
that's
And so after I graduated from college, I moved out to Colorado, to Denver. Sort of always knew I wanted to come out here. Like most people here, I'm a pretty avid outdoorsman, like hiking and skiing and all the good things that Colorado has to offer.
yep.
Um, Came out here with no job, not a lot, no money, but just knew I wanted to come out here. And somehow I scored a job. I love sports. I'm very into sports. I've always been into sports. And I got a job working for the Colorado Rockies baseball team, actually,
Oh
in
wow.
their finance department. Yeah, so like sort of economics adjacent, or at least you know money, things like that adjacent. Worked there for 4 or 5 years. Right out of college, it was a really exciting job for
Yeah.
not having much experience in the real world, and got to eat lunch in the stadium and go to games. And
Yeah, how
um,
cool is that? That's like the
it
dream.
was like it's kind of like every young kid's dream. Somehow they didn't see through me, and I I got the job. So, but slowly as I was in working in that job, I kind of got a little bored, just with the work itself. And I actually started taking, I don't even know if they offer this anymore, but they offer these like adult education classes at the Nature and Science Museum here in town. And I was always interested in geology, and I was like, oh, I can, enrich myself in higher learning while I'm, doing other things. And I totally just fell in love with it. I mean, it's a really, you know, big change. And I guess I, would give some of that back to the Nature and Science Museum. Like I said, I don't know if they offer those classes anymore, but at the time I was like 25 and I was probably in a room full of 70 plus folks who are 70 plus years old who are just, doing this for fun.
Okay.
And I did some field trips with them, just took some very basic classes, and I just made this giant career change. And so I quit my job. I went back and took some just basic sort of undergrad classes at oh my gosh, I can't, like the campus in downtown, like Metro State. They had a good geology program. I just took, maybe 3 classes because I was like, well, maybe I can just go to grad school, but I should probably have taken a geology class. And so I did that. I worked for a year actually as an intern at the Nature and Science Museum through just my connections from taking some classes. It was really, really cool, really exciting work. But then I applied to School of Mines just because I wanted to stay in Denver.
Yeah.
And so I actually got my master's degree. Again, they must have seen something in me.
Yeah,
I got
right.
my master's degree in geology at the Colorado School of Mines, but more on the economic geology side. So I was doing more hard rock mining applications. I was sponsored actually through my master's from by Newmont Mining at the time, and I sort of worked part-time for them while I was getting my degree. And yeah, so that was definitely like my first real foray into geology. And I, again, still fell in love with it after I got my master's. So I did my master's project on Carlin Gold Trend out in Nevada. So, a little bit of it actually was sedimentary hosted gold deposit. So, it wasn't all hard rock at the time. And yeah, after that, are we still on the same question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd like to maybe revisit that transition from, from working for the Rockies and then into geology. Like, and that's something I think a lot of us in our careers, like, we have to kind of navigate career
Yeah.
changes, whether they're intentional or unintended.
Yeah.
Like what kind of, I mean, that's a pretty brave move, right? It's for a 25-year-old with a good job at the Rockies to say like, hey, I want to
Well, I
pull
think
this
it
up, right?
speaks to the fact that like geology is just such a cool job. And I don't say that to be glib. Like it's every day something new, something exciting. I've always been into like puzzles, and I feel like geology is the ultimate puzzle.
Yeah.
You have to put together all these disparate data sets and really be creative in how you interpret things, and that just really spoke to me. And I can almost guarantee I'm not the only person who feels that way. I think I'm lucky that I found it relatively early in my career. It wasn't like I was 50 or something, but yeah, no, it was a big change. And people, when I tell them what my first job was, they don't really understand. They don't understand, like, that path is definitely not linear.
Yeah.
But I think it comes back to also just being a kid and loving the outdoors and sort of enjoying the world around you and trying to understand the world around you. When people ask, like, what does a geologist do? Most people think I like dig for bones or something, which is a subset of geology, or like I'm an archaeologist. I think my mom still thinks I'm an archaeologist, so I'm just going to let that one go. But getting a lot of laughter there. Yeah, like, how is your dig? And I'm like, not what
Right.
I do, but
My grandma says that all the time. Yeah.
yeah. But there's something just magical about this profession. I mean, even I think most of us now spend 90% of the time on a computer, which is not as glorious. But even that, to me, it's still piecing these pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's just I can't imagine what my mindset was, or like what I was actually thinking back then, but I'm glad I took that leap.
Yeah, and so you mentioned you maybe did a few remedial classes or just kind of undergrad classes before you entered your master's. Like I can't really imagine, you know, not doing an undergrad in geology and then going into a master's degree. Was that challenging? Was it relatively?
Yeah, mine's is pretty, like the program there was pretty good. They weren't like, yes, you can just walk in here. They definitely, I took some classes with undergrads, some of the higher level ones. So it actually took me 3 years to get a master's instead of the typical two, just because it's been a year. Like I did field camp, with all the undergrads. I was probably 26 or 27. I don't know. I was the old lady in the bunch at the time. Um, so uh, yeah, it wasn't a straight path. I still had to. The good thing was like because mine's is very sort of a technical school, very engineering focused. I had happened to take a lot of the math classes as an undergrad, so some of the more technical sort of requirements I had already taken, thankfully.
Oh yeah,
But it
okay.
was really just I had very few geology classes, but I kind of worked my way through and pretended I knew what I was doing, and um, and sort of took undergrad classes while taking graduate school classes. And, that's kind of unorthodox, I guess. But, once you've done graduates or undergrad and you've worked, like you can kind of pull all this together. I think being older helped for sure.
Yeah.
So,
That
yeah.
definitely kind of trying to search for the right words here, but yeah, it kind of maybe helps you focus and
Yeah. I wasn't out partying. Not that there's a lot of that going on at mines anyway, but um, yeah.
cool. Okay, so let's go back to the PhD. You said it was in the Carlton trend, and
Oh, the Masters
oh,
was
that was your
along the
master.
Carlin Trend in Nevada. It's sort of like a world famous or world class gold district, but it's all sediment hosted gold. So you're looking at the Paleozoic, you know, carbonate and siltstones that are hosting these sort of disseminated gold deposits.
Okay.
So yeah, that was definitely my first foray into sort of the sedimentary side of things. And then once I was finished with my master's, I have to think back here. What did I? Oh, I actually got hired on as a researcher at mines in like a laboratory. Um, it's like it was at the time. It's like unaffiliated. It was affiliated with the school, but not necessarily the geology department. And we were doing a lot of mineralogy work. So I'd say sort of one theme throughout my career is I've always been interested in mineralogy, sort of fine scale. It's very different from what I'm doing now, but microscope work,
Yeah.
SEM work, and that transitioned to a job that I did for about 2 or 3 years, where we did research from everything from mining systems to sedimentary systems, environmental questions. Um, we even looked at samples from the moon. We got some samples from, I think it was an Apollo 17 mission where they had some moon samples, and we got to analyze some of the dust that they were looking at, and that was certainly a highlight of that job.
Cool.
Um, and then the recession came in 2009 or 8 or 9, and we just did. It was we all of our the entire laboratory was built on getting funds from outside work, and so nobody was spending money on anything extracurricular at the time. So that lab kind of folded up into the department, and I went back and got it. I decided to get a PhD, also at Mines, and that was with through the basically sponsored with Chevron. So that was the Chevron Center of Research Excellence, which is still at Mines, and I again transitioned into true just sedimentary systems, oil and gas type uh, research, but looking at deep water deposits. I did outcrop work out in San Diego. I did experimental work with collaborators actually at Tulane University. And then also I was able to get access to some deep water cores from the Gulf of Mexico. So sort of this tripart research system looking at mineralogy and how that and sedimentary processes and how that affects diagenesis and ultimate, recovery for oil and gas and things like that. So I did that for a number of years. So I told you, it's going to be a very circuitous route.
Love it.
And then out of my PhD, I got hired by Chevron, and I moved down to Houston for about 5 years. And so I was working in Chevron's, what was it called? This sort of the research side of their business. And I spent 3 or 4 years looking at basically helping business units in the Gulf of Mexico, looking at all these now famous or, deep water, Wilcox Trend, and all the way up through the Miocene. Really, really cool work. I mean, just unending. We got access to the cores and, looking at things that have been cored at 30,000 feet, just things that are mind blowing that still have porosity and just, really, really great experience at Chevron. Sort of transitioned toward the Permian at the later part of my time at Chevron, just because that was sort of when everything was exploding in the Permian, and taking what I knew from deep water systems and applying it to, some of the, deep water Permian systems in those basins.
Okay.
Where are we?
Yeah. So your time at Chevron.
Yeah. And then, so while we were down in Houston, got married, had our first kid. My husband's also a geologist. So we kind of were trying to see what we wanted to do next. And we came back to Denver. I had a sort of interim job for 2 years working at a small shop here in Denver, but right sort of when COVID started, had another kid, and then got hired on to the USGS. So 2020 was kind of a whirlwind year for me personally. But I've been here now for 5 years, just over 5 years. I absolutely love this position. Very different in terms of just the scale at things that I'm looking at. We're doing much more regional studies, basin scale studies, but have a bunch of great collaborators. And here we are. And I guess that kind of segues into what I'll be talking about next in a couple of weeks.
I also was thinking about, and I usually ask this about mentors through your career, and the point of asking this for me is, I think I know myself, I'm getting to that part of my career where I need to be more of a mentor than a mentee, but always learning. But like, how do we become better mentors for people that are trying to navigate the boom and bust cycle? The challenging geology career world, right? Like, what do you think makes a good mentor? Or another way to kind of think about that is, how have mentorship or mentors affected you in the past in positive ways that you?
Yeah, no, it's actually a really good question, and it's something I think a lot of people don't think about a lot.
Yeah.
Throughout my career, I'm sure just like everybody, I've had both good and bad. And it's, I don't know. I think it's like, you just got to take somebody under your wing that I feel really fortunate that people saw something in me, even though I didn't have that background. I think just the intellectual curiosity that people bring, regardless of what it is something to hone in on as a potential mentor. I think people who just are excited about their work is a really big thing, and bringing that excitement to a different generation is important. I'd say, I like yourself, I'm definitely in a position now through this circuitous route where I feel like I'm in a position to be a mentor. I think we'll always be mentees, right? We always want to learn, but I think the biggest thing I'd try to impart on sort of the next generation as a geologist or somebody going into geology is like, don't think about the commodity that might be associated with what you're doing. Um, that is always going to be secondary. I don't think people go into oil and gas or mining or environmental because they're like, I like that necessarily. It's like they like the geology, the geologic aspect of it. And if you can just learn to be a good geologist and appreciate the complexities of it and understand that you're never going to get to the right answer,
Yeah.
as opposed to like, I think that's going to take people a long way, especially, I mean, I think in grad school, people in mentors in grad school say like, don't take the class that's going to train you on how to use a software. Like you will learn that in your career. Take the class that's going to teach you structural geology or sedimentology or, you know, just geochemistry, just these basic foundational things that I think are maybe lost right now. and, 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 and I think once you get those foundational things, you can ride that boom and bust a lot better because there's always going to be, well, one sector might be in a bust. There's always going to be something that's in a boom, but the skills are transferable or should be transferable. And I hope people can really just take that love of geology and put it toward learning that as opposed to being very specific about where you want to go or what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I think there's some common themes in there that I was hearing when you were talking about finding getting somebody that gives you a chance. And I know like in my career, like I've gone through a layoff and had somebody give me a chance in the
Yeah.
Permian that I didn't have any experience there and that changed my life. And right. And
Yeah.
having somebody that, believes in maybe fundamentals and teaching the right person,
Yeah.
kind of having the right person, but maybe not the specific job for them, right? Like,
Yes.
and for people that are, maybe younger in their career, being flexible and,
Being flexible
yeah,
is huge.
yeah, yeah, I think
Uh,
that's great. And focusing on fundamentals because that's, yeah, I think those are all great points. So yeah.
yeah.
Um, cool. And then why don't we talk a little about what sorry, I'm thinking about the next question. Let's go. How about this? How about what keeps you fascinated about geology and keeps
Oh
you
man.
coming back?
There's gosh. I just like, I mean, most of the work I'm currently doing is all subsurface based, but we also are fortunate here at the USGS that we get to drill some cores and do a lot of research and sort of tie, one point here and run the gamut of analyses and then tie it to the bigger picture. And it's just, I mean, geology is so fundamental to everything we do. I mean, I think about this a lot. Like if you go back and look at like a news story at any given time or any day, there's always something geology related going on in the news. Whether or not people actually make that connection is another thing, but um, it's just so integral to sort of everything we do every day, whether it's, being here in Denver where it hasn't rained in 6 months and we need actual water and understanding where the water is and how we're going to get it out of the ground, or obviously energy needs are always important, whether it's, no matter what type of energy we're producing from. I do like that, we can do everything from the micron scale through a microscope to the seismic scale.
Like
It's
that.
just, it's hard to think of another profession where you're looking at such a range of scale.
Yeah.
It'd be hard pressed to to find something like that.
Yeah.
Being here in Colorado certainly makes things interesting. We always joke that we're going to drive off the side of the road and, the kids are going to, fly out of the car because we're like completely not paying attention.
Yeah.
Um, I like imparting that stuff to my kids. We try to take them to national parks and show them all the cool stuff that the U.S. has to offer. I just
Yeah.
can't think of a better job, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it just makes you appreciate, the puddle on the ground and the trees growing on the sandstone on a ridge. Like you just get to think about all these things that I guess you wouldn't normally pick up on if you weren't in this field.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that scale analogy from microscopic to or smaller to the size.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, you made me think of like, my kids get really bored with pontificating about whatever outcrop we're looking at. But my youngest daughter can identify ripple marks, and I'm just like, she's like
See,
ripples. I'm like, yes.
I know there's always something to bring in for show and tell. I mean, it makes itself useful.
Yeah, that's great. Cool. How about, do you have any favorite rocks,
Oh
minerals,
gosh.
or outcrops, or anything come to mind?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
And then I'd say my favorite mineral, this is a hard one. I really like tourmaline.
Yeah, good
It's
one.
it comes in all colors. It's really pretty. It's kind of like the chemically, it's like the wastebasket of minerals.
Right? Right.
So I feel bad for it and I give it a little love. I also like kyanite a lot because of its differential hardness. It's like a really fun party trick. Like you can cut it this way, but you can't cut it this way.
Oh, okay.
Also, just a fun silicate. Yeah, that's what I'll go with.
That's great. Those are two great ones. Um, cool. Well, yeah, this is great. What can our membership expect from your talk, which is coming up next not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after, so
2 weeks
Tuesday,
about, yeah.
January 20th.
Um, yeah, so I'm going to be talking about a core that we drilled in the Lewis Shale up in Wyoming on the the east side, basically of the Washakie Basin. Um, and we drilled this in 2022 and it presented a publication on it last year and sort of tie in this one point in space to much broader regional mapping of the Lewis Shale Formation in general. There's been a lot more interest in this formation in maybe the last 5 years. There's a lot of companies starting to drill laterals in the Washakie and Great Divide Basin along the Wamsutter Arch. That sort of the first time for this play. So I think it's timely. And I think we did a good job of just tying sort of regional mapping of this basin floor fan system with what we're seeing in the core and trying to understand sort of the evolution of the basin, basically right as the laramide started popping up at the end of the Cretaceous. So,
Cool.
yeah.
My first group I worked in was in Wamsutter.
Oh,
Um,
okay, yeah.
when I was bored trying to correlate in the almond, I'd pick the Lewis tops because those
Lewis is a lot easier to correlate. I mean, the almonds just, yeah, it's not as well connected or relative, but yeah, Lewis is sort of like baby's first mapping project in a very cool way.
easy enough for me to pick. And yeah, no, it'd be really cool to see some core data on that.
Sure.
Well, hey, this has been really fun just to talk with you and get to know you. And thanks for doing this. And again, so Jane's talk is coming up on Tuesday, January 27th. We start at 11:30. The talk starts about noon. You can join us in person. You can join online from anywhere in the world, but either way, you got to register. So go to rmssepm.org and register today. We'll be taking registration all the way through the Monday before the talk, so register before then. But yeah, we look forward to seeing everybody there, and Jane, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Ben. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Have a
All
great
right.
day.
See ya.
Bye.
Thank you.